and welcome to Step Outside. I'm your host, Pete Curet. On today's show, we're here in the Verde Valley to explore Arizona's wine country. First up, we travel to one of the oldest vineyards in the area, where tourists aren't just coming for the wine. And white, red, or rosé, what actually makes a good bottle of wine? We'll visit some tasting rooms and get some tips on wine varieties. Plus, a trip to a restaurant that's small on space, but big on flavor. That's all coming up on Step Outside. We're here in Old Town Cottonwood, which is the heart of the Verde Valley. This region has a lot to offer, especially when it comes to wine.
Cottonwood is this really cool small town atmosphere, but with so much to do. We're only an hour and a half away from Phoenix, which is unbelievable.
Cottonwood, named for the trees that surround the area, is home to about 25,000 people. In Old Town Cottonwood, small shops line the streets selling antiques and other unusual items. You can also find restaurants and coffee shops. But in the last 5 years or so, a new industry has popped up in this sleepy town.
Cottonwood, Arizona is the heart of Arizona wine country, for one thing. Cottonwood has a lot of history to it. This area that we're in Old Town, used to be known as a bootlegging community way back. And there's a lot of history here. Townspeople have a lot of tradition. They love their community.
It might be hard to believe that grapes could grow in Arizona's climate. Casey says the Verde Valley is similar to wine regions in France and Italy.
So it has a lot to do with the weather and the temperature. Unlike Phoenix, it cools down at night. So it's warm during the day, it cools down during the evening, and that's a great environment for growing grapes.
And all those grapes are great for Cottonwood's economy. The vineyards, wine tasting rooms, and other businesses bring in about $25 million a year in revenue. Despite its booming economy, Cottonwood hasn't lost any of the charm that brings tourists from all over the world.
You've got to come up, you've got to come to Old Town Cottonwood. It's like walking down Main Street in the 1950s. It's almost like Mayberry.
Right where the Verde River and Oak Creek meet sits Alcantara Vineyards. Owned by Barbara Predmore and her husband Bob, this is a dream come true for Barbara, who has always wanted to make wine. We're here at Alcantara Wineries, and with me I have one of the owners, Barbara. How you doing, Barbara?
Nice to have you here, Pete.
So, when did you guys actually acquire and plant this vineyard?
This vineyard, we closed on it and there was nothing here in 2005, January, and we planted the first vines in April and May 2005. Our first vines that went in were approximately 4,000 vines.
So this was all just desert landscape, and you did all this terracing with all these rocks. Imagine there was no shortage of rocks here.
No. A lot of rocks that were here and everything, and yes, this rock all comes from this property, and painstakingly it was hand moved.
Mm-hmm. How many varieties of wine do you have here?
Varieties of wine, well, we have about 13 different wines, but we have about 11 varietals of grapes that we can actually put in a bottle and put that varietal on the bottle, like Merlot or something similar.
Is there one that does better than another one here?
Oh, we have our Confluence, and our Confluence is our signature blend, where we take the best grapes from different harvests and we do it in a blend.
Well, it's a really beautiful property. I mean, I see, all the different levels here. I mean, we could be anywhere in the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm very blessed.
Well, in fact, I understand this is harvest time right now.
Yes.
And I'm going to be going and seeing with Craig, who's your vintner.
Craig Boyd, yes, and he's an amazing winemaker.
Well, let's go take a look at what's going on in the actual winery part then.
Sounds great.
Right.
Let's go, Pete.
We're now in the spot where it all happens. And I'm standing here with Craig, the winemaker, who's the guy who makes it happen. How you doing, Craig?
Doing great. Nice to meet you.
So give me a little bit of idea on your pedigree for doing this stuff.
I've been in business 25 years now. I've started with a master's degree from UC Davis and spent most of my career in California, and bounced around a little bit and ended up here about a year ago.
So you guys are actually harvesting grapes right now, because I can smell stuff fermenting in
Yes,
there.
we are. We're about 2/3 of the way through picking our grapes. You're a day early. We're picking very well.
So right now you got a lot of grapes sitting in big vats and they're fermenting.
They are.
What's the next step?
Next step would be to press them. The fermentation will take 10 to 14 days, depending on the yeast, the temperature, and the variety. And then we'll put them through the press, which basically separates liquids from solids, let them settle in some of the stainless tanks you see around here. And then once they're settled out, we put them in the barrels.
So how important is it that these go into these wood barrels, and what kind of barrels are these?
We have a mixture of French, American, a little bit of Eastern European in here. And it's very important because it's a very important step in the aging process, because the wood is permeable to oxygen, and that helps the wines mellow out a little bit.
So if you didn't put them in the wood barrels, you'd still have wine, but it might not taste as
It
good?
might not taste as good, or it would take a lot longer before it did taste good. So we're essentially speeding up the aging process a little bit by having them in barrels. And they'll be in the barrels anywhere from 18 to 30 months, depending on the wine and the demand.
So you got to really know what you're doing if you want good wine, huh?
Certainly helps.
Well, I think you do know what you're doing. Thanks a lot, Craig.
Thank you.
A special place here at the vineyard is this open-air chapel. So Bob, I understand you were the architect behind this building. Besides your wife, Barb, what was your inspiration for this?
Well, when back in 2008 we built the winery, and we really needed some space out in the middle of the vineyard in order to for our harvest. So it started out with that idea, and I'm in design and construction with it. And so on a plane back from China, I actually started sketching up the design, and it turned into, because of the uniqueness of the location, it actually turned into a chapel design for us with it. And it worked out extremely well. So we've used it for both the original concept of a pavilion for the harvest and quite extensively for weddings that we've had out here.
Yeah, I know recently Martha Stewart magazine named you guys one of the top 10 destinations outside of California for a winery wedding. What kind of services do you offer here?
You know, we have wedding planners that we deal with, and a list of caterers and people that do all the work. We essentially have the weddings out here with it, and we can set it up for up to 200 people in the wedding. And then right now what we're doing is having the receptions up at the tasting room grass area with it, and it's worked out extremely well with it.
Well, it's a beautiful place for somebody to decide to come out and get married
It
in.
is very much so. The photographers love it.
Bob, really appreciate both you and Barb, your wife, having us out to your beautiful property here today.
Oh, we really appreciate you coming out.
Thanks a lot. Coming up on Step Outside, it's the company some say put Arizona on the wine map. We head to Arizona Stronghold's winery for a lesson on making award-winning wine. And later, a visit to the area's newest tasting room, where the wine is kept safe in a former bank. If you're a fan of Arizona wines, chances are you've heard of Arizona Stronghold. It's considered one of the most well-known wines here in Arizona, and in fact, we're in Camp Verde at the Arizona Stronghold Winery, and with me is Niles Johnson. How you doing, Niles?
Pretty good, yourself?
So you make all this yourself, right?
Oh gosh, no. We've got a pretty good team here, and share the responsibility equally. It's a lot of work for us, especially right now.
You're in the middle of harvest season,
Yeah.
huh? Where do you get your grapes? Because I didn't see a vineyard out there.
Well, the majority of our fruit comes from the southeastern Arizona area, Wilcox, Kansas settlement. And then we also do some stuff from northern Arizona fruit for custom crush clients, things like that.
So take me through the process. If there's a truckload of grapes sitting out on the truck, what do you do with them?
We unload the truck and we start processing immediately because we don't want anything to happen to that. From there, let's say if it's red grapes, for example, it'll get destemmed and then brought in here. We'll run some tests on it and determine what exactly we want to do to it and inoculate it with yeast. White grapes, it'll get thrown in our press, and that all the juice is taken off the skins, and then run some
You
more
just
tests.
ferment those on the juice because you don't want the skins imparting any
Right,
color
exactly.
to those, okay? I see tons of different vats and bins and tanks and stuff. I mean, all the way through after you've like crushed them and put them in one of the vats, and I see these guys poking them down. How long does that take?
Well, that's punch downs, and we'll be doing that during a red fermentation, so it can take anywhere from 4 days to a couple weeks, depending on the fermentation kinetics. Basically, what we're doing with that is we are, think of it like steeping tea. We're imparting some of these compounds that are in the skins, the phenolics, tannins, things like that, into the wine.
Now, I saw you dipping your hand in there and taking big scoops of juice out. What were you doing with that?
I was taking samples to test running Brix, which is the sugar level of the wine, and then temperature. And we keep a spreadsheet of all that so we can keep track of all our fermentations and have a better idea anyway what's going on at any given point in time.
The sugar level will lead to the alcohol content then.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the way it works, yeast metabolizes sugar and creates alcohol and CO2.
And then ultimately that juice ends up in these vats?
Eventually, but then from the vat, like for a red, it'll get in there and we'll settle it for a little while, like a day or so, and then we will rack it off of that and into barrels. And we tend to do a lot of barrel aging with neutral oak here rather than new oak, because new oak can overpower the wine, really.
The flavor of the wine?
Yeah.
So, how many bottles of wine does this place produce in a year?
For Arizona Stronghold, we do about 12,000 cases.
Well, it's been great to have you show us around here and see how it's actually done. We're going to head on over to your tasting room, which is in Old Town Cottonwood, and see what's going on there, and maybe even get a taste of some of this great wine. Great wine is a given here in the Verde Valley, but when it comes to pairing fine dining and wine, you can't go wrong at Abby's Kitchen.
Hi, I'm Abby Ashford. I own Abby's Kitchen in Cottonwood, Arizona. So Abby's restaurant a few years ago was a rental property. There was a person happily living in here. And we decided, let's have a restaurant. And this was the perfect location. It's a little house. It's very charming, it's very old. It grew up in Jerome, and I guess they moved it down the mountain before it fell down the mountain sometime in the 40s. I don't know how quite they did that then. I don't know how quite they do it now either. But it was just got located right on Main Street in Old Town Cottonwood. And however they moved it down, they did it beautifully, because a lot of the windows still have the wavy glass in them. Some of the floors are original. The food at Abby's Kitchen, we try to keep it really clean. Just try to stick to real food. We make everything here, the pasta, the doughs, the desserts, and we make an old-fashioned, a pound cake. Just really nothing frilly about it. Slice it, and then I butter it and grill it on a cast iron. And the food, we just perfect. We just try to make it perfectly clean and delicious.
My name is Andy, and I am the server at Abby's Kitchen. I also put together the wine list to match with Abby's food. At Abby's Kitchen, we only serve Arizona wine. The wines in Arizona have become so outstanding in their quality that there's no reason for us to go outside the state to pair anything that Abby wants to cook. And Abby's food is pretty simple. She takes very simple, good quality ingredients and doesn't mess around with them too much. So I can find wines that will go with a variety of what she does. When you come to Abby's Kitchen, you expect to not be in a hurry. It's your table for the night. You can be here for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. It's your place. It's like going to somebody's house.
It's not really a restaurant. It's more like a work of love. I just love to cook for people, and I just want you to have the perfect dinner away from home.
Next up, we head to the wine tasting room for Arizona Stronghold to taste their award-winning wine. We're here in Old Town Cottonwood at the Arizona Stronghold tasting room. And with me is Justin. How you doing, Justin?
Very well, thank you.
So tell me, how many different bottles of wine do you guys have here for people to taste?
Right now we're serving about 19 different wines. In any given year we'll make 30 to 35 wines in a year.
Boy, that's a lot to choose from. You know, a lot of people kind of think wine tasting is a little bit of a snobby thing, but it really doesn't have to be, does it?
It doesn't, it's what you make it. You know, it's just grape juice when you get down to it. And it can be as fancy or not fancy as you make it.
Is the glass important?
It's one of the important things, absolutely. And I think probably one of the things that maybe gets overlooked, you know, we talk a lot about temperature serving, we talk about aerating wines a lot, but one of the things we overlook when we talk about tasting glasses is the lip here. You know, most of us have glasses that have a nice bowl on them, you know, and that's an obvious point to make. What I like to look for in a glass is I like to look at the lip. And if you check this out, so this is something I would take on a picnic, all right, you know, durable, but this lip is not quite as fine as this lip here. This has kind of this little speed bump to it, right? And you'd be shocked and amazed. I pour the same wine in each of these glasses. Look at how square this edge is, nice and clean. Now just the way that this hits your palate changes the actual way that the wine tastes. Now a small degree, but when you're talking about wine, you know, and you're talking about you throw $20 or $30 on a bottle, you want to get everything you can out of that bottle.
So what you're really saying is the most important thing in wine tasting is they go to a place with somebody like you who knows what he's doing.
Well, it'll help, yeah, you know, I refer to it kind of like, you know, if you're going to have a fine meal, you want to use a nice napkin, a nice fork, a nice knife, a nice plate. You know, you don't want to serve lobster on a paper plate. Sure, it's going to taste good, but not quite as good. And that's what we're doing here. We're fine-tuning the experience.
So you're really creating a nice environment. You know, Old Town Cottonwood has just blossomed in the last couple of years with a lot of different cool places to be, and this is definitely one of them.
It's a hip spot.
It is. Well, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Up next on Step Outside, we're off to my neighborhood, Clarkdale. We'll check out a wine tasting room that was once the site of Arizona's biggest bank heist. We're now in the town of Clarkdale, a community known for arts and also home to 4-8 Wine Works, a wine tasting room and co-op. We're here in the 4-8 Wine Works, and I have with me David Baird, who is the tasting room manager. How you doing, David?
Very well, thanks. How are you?
So you guys are the first wine tasting room to open in Clarkdale, right?
We are.
And you opened in this really cool old building. Tell me a little bit about this building.
We're housed here in the old bank, one of the original banks in Arizona. It's founded in 1914. In fact, all the buildings on this street were put in 1914. This building was, the home to one of 3 robberies to involve a motor vehicle back in 1926. So the building itself comes with a really great story, and we like having lots of talking points here.
Well, and I see you carried a lot of character from the building. You got the teller cages, you got the old bank vault.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the teller station was here when we got here. We eventually, on our own, moved it up against the wall there just to kind of create a little bit more flow in the room, but the vault is the vault, and that's where we house our t-shirts now.
So when people come to the 4-8 Wine Works, what kind of experience can they expect?
Well, it's nice. It's kind of a hub for Northern Arizona and our winemakers. We've got 4 different winemakers, 6 different labels that are all offered here in the tasting room. A really wide range of wines that kind of change throughout the week. So at any given moment, you can run into something different here. Currently, we've got about 30 or so different wines.
And you got a cool bar with some beer too, right?
Yeah, we've also got some draft beer on tap. We don't want to punish people for having preferences, so come on in and have a beer or wine. Either way, it's special stuff.
And then you also have some food?
Yeah, we've got a really nice cheese plate and some charcuterie, and again, that stuff changes often as well.
Well, thanks for letting me know a little bit more about your operations. Now I think I need to talk to Chris and find a little bit more about the wine co-op that goes on here. So Chris, I understand that Maynard Keenan, who fronts for the band Tool, decided to open this place. Why'd you do that?
Well, he's a creative and generous human being, so I think he sensed that there was a lot of talent around him, bunches of winemakers that are working behind the scenes that had no financial backing to be able to purchase equipment, so he thought, oh, if I can open a cooperative winemaking studio, I'll keep some of these talents around, which helps him too, because then they all communicate and there's a really nice symbiosis that happens.
So this is more of a co-op wine place then?
It is. So there's a co-op winery and then there's a co-op tasting room. So the wine is made down in Camp Verde and then the wine is sold here in Clarkdale.
How many different people are making wine?
There's 4 different winemakers at this point. There's a college up here also, and we're hoping to bring some of that talent in as it graduates.
So a great place for people to kind of display their abilities in making wine.
Yeah, absolutely. Without the extreme overhead, it's a great place. It's an incubator to keep people in the area.
You make your own wine?
We do, yeah. So my husband actually manages the co-op facility, and then we have a label called Chateau Tumbleweed that's coming out of that and selling up here. We have 2 business partners that work full-time for Page Spring Cellars as the accountant and the vineyard manager. So
when you're making your own wine, what's important to really make it taste good?
You know, it starts in the vines, so you need a really good vineyard manager. You're trying to bottle the chemical communication that happens in nature every year, so you're hoping that the vines are producing in a really nice, and they're cropped at the right place, and then the movement is proper, and then the winemaker, you know, influences it however he wants to, but hopefully not. Joe believes in not a lot of influence, just trying to really get what happened on the vines into the bottle.
All right, so how do you really find a good bottle of wine?
Of wine? Well, you come to cooperative winemaking studios so you can taste other people at once, but also it's really important to have your own perception and decide what you like and then stick with that for a while, because it changes just like any kind of taste, and so you can shift, your perception shifts, and to keep open. If you don't like a Merlot one day, you might find one you like later, so don't put any walls up.
Well, you know, I really appreciate you letting me come in and take a look at this cool place.
It's rad, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Cool.
Well, I had a great time up here in my neck of the woods. From Clarkdale to Camp Verde to Cottonwood, Arizona is really on the map when it comes to making great wine. So, if you're looking for a little adventure, step outside and head on up here to Arizona's wine country. Each week on Step Outside, we show you some of the endless possibilities that await you just beyond your door. So come on, step outside and enjoy the view. I'm Pete Curet. See you next time.